You're now listening to the Engage the Rockies podcast, your go-to podcast for local and state issues concerning Colorado.
Hello, Colorado. This is the Engage the Rockies podcast. I am your host, Jarvis Caldwell, Executive Director of Engage the Rockies. Today, we have a special guest, the CEO of Colorado Springs Utilities, Mr. Travas Deal. And we're going to be talking about if you've looked at your bill recently and you see rates going up, kind of what is the driving factor of that? What's causing that? And what should we expect in the near future with our utilities rates? Who's to blame and what's causing all that going on? So I want to give Mr. Deal a quick brief introduction here. So Travas joined Colorado Springs Utilities in 2017 as Field Services Manager. In 2018, he transitioned to the Energy Services Division, serving in a district manager role and then 2 general manager positions, leading significant process improvements for the utility. He was named Chief Operations Officer in April 2020, responsible for the safe and reliable operations of the utility's 4 services: electric, natural gas, water, and wastewater. Mr. Deal was sworn in as Chief Executive Officer on February 24th, 2023. And if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Deal, I believe you are also a Marine, United States Marine. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, I almost said a former Marine, but I know I did 10 years in the Air Force. I know you never say former Marine, so I caught myself there. So, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay. Well, let's get right into it here, sir. So can you kind of give us a large overview of Colorado Springs Utilities? You know, how many people do you service, kind of what areas, and the services you provide?
Yeah, Colorado Springs Utilities is actually the largest for-service utility with self-generation in the United States. So we actually serve, like you mentioned, Jarvis, water, wastewater, gas, and electric, and we are self-generated. We're also a transmission owner. So we sort of have a full gambit of everything, which makes it nice for our customers because, it's a one-stop shop. Instead of having multiple bills from multiple providers, we're all on one bill. We service, predominantly El Paso County. We have franchise agreements. So we serve all the way up into Green Mountain Falls, up to Cascade, up through there, pushing up in that area. We do wholesale agreements with other areas south of us, whether it's, down through Fort Carson. Of course, we serve as one of our military partners, and it goes down. We bring power even from Pueblo into them on some wheeling. So we got a lot of complexity in our system. But predominantly is going to be El Paso County, Colorado Springs footprint, the city boundaries, which serves around 268,000 electric meters. Gas is close to that. Water is a little bit less because we have master meters. They're around, just under 200,000. So large footprint with a lot of customers, especially when you tie in all 4 services. And Colorado Springs Utilities, what's nice is, this is our 100th year birthday this year, 100th year anniversary of being a municipal-owned 4-service utility. So we take serving our customers very seriously. We're a customer-owned utility. That's really the basis of public power, being a municipal utility, but serve all 4 of those services.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into the crux of this and the bread and butter, which is what everybody's tuning in for, which is rates are going up. We all see our bills, and can you kind of give us some context here on why we're seeing, just across the country and in every facet of our lives, we're seeing rates go up, right? Whether you're going to the grocery store, you're going to the gas station, energy bills no different here. So if you can kind of give us some background on why customers are seeing rates going up.
Yeah, and I think, it gets into, Colorado Springs Utilities, we've always tried to manage a one bill, type of utility. We see all the bill impacts, and we always say it's a blessing and a curse being a 4-service utility. Blessing is, there's only one CEO, one officer, and we have efficiencies. The curse is we take all of those rate increases that you would see through 4 different companies, we put it on one bill. So it makes it a challenge, for that aspect. But just like everybody else, and you mentioned on it, all of our labor prices, contract prices, material prices, everything that we use as well as an organization has went up, continues to go up. We're seeing a lot of our contracts that we come in, suppliers and laborers, is going up 30%. So we have that normal cost, that normal escalation of cost. And on top of that, Colorado Springs is growing. A lot of people want to live on the Front Range. I think it's really good, what you're doing with this podcast, educating people, but the Front Range is growing. It's ever growing. So we have
Right.
growth to contend with. And we live in a state that is very aggressive, on regulations. So utilities is definitely probably one of the higher regulated, type of industries out there. And we've got, 4 of those, commodities that are regulated, whether it's, water and wastewater, which has its own set of regulations, whether it's getting ready for PFAS, some different things that they're looking at, ratcheting down some of those requirements. Those make a challenge, and just acquiring water in general in the state of Colorado is
Yeah.
a challenge. We bring our water from 135 miles away. We don't live on these large tributaries. You go to
Right.
Denver, you got the South Platte. You go to Pueblo, you got Arkansas. So we have to use pipes and mechanical means to bring water from our reservoirs way out, all the way up to Park County, even up into Breckenridge area on the slopes there. So we have to spend a lot of money to bring water here, and our reservoirs are very important. But probably the biggest bulk of that, about 70% of ours rate increase, and we're going to be looking at on a total bill, is really going to be on the energy side.
Mhm.
Colorado is really looking to transition, to decarbonization, and really taking a look to see as what that life after coal looks like. We have coal plants and we
Mhm.
have plants. So in 2030, at the end of 2029, we actually have to take our last coal plant offline, which is Nixon Power Plant. So
Mhm.
once it comes based off of regulation, I've run that plant for many years after that if I could, but with that plant coming offline, that's a base load generation that goes away. So we have to meet 80% carbon reduction by the end of 29. And, the state is continuing to take a look at, what's that next level of decarbonization targets. So the reason this drives up costs, and, I try to make a very complex, type of situation and problem into something that everybody can understand, hopefully on this podcast today,
Mhm.
is you're really transition. You have to have 2 different types of a fleet now. So, renewables has a place. Diversity of portfolio is always good. So
Mhm.
renewables, not having any isn't the answer, but having all renewables isn't the answer either. So I'm
Right.
more a balanced type of approach. When sun's available, it's very effective. When wind's available, it's getting more effective, but it's heavily subsidized. Wind's a lot more subsidized, through the federal than what solar is. But to get those, to bring those online to meet those carbon reduction targets, we still have to carry another fleet. We have to carry a fossil fleet.
Right.
So now you get into just the simplistic nature of overproduction. So
Mhm.
you're going to carry a large amount of renewables to try to meet those, but they're not available 24/7. So I also have to carry another fleet over here. That
Right.
didn't exist. Used to
Yeah.
you base load power plants, whether it's coal, gas, nuclear, depending on what country you are, and they just were the old diesel, and they just would ramp up and they run 24/7. You don't have that now. So to meet those, that's why that cost is there. I still have to have fossil generations to make sure I have reliability of delivery electricity for our customers. We've
Yeah.
also got military installations.
Right.
But as you bring these renewables on, that's why the cost is so extreme. To try to meet some of these targets that the state are mandating, it comes with a high price tag. As technology evolves, not saying that, I do think there's going to be a type of nuclear reaction technology out there that
Mhm.
continues to improve. And I think there's a path forward, for a different type of base load generation in our future. I don't think we're there yet. And I think sometimes, when we get too aggressive before technology is there to support it, you see what happens, and you have to overbuild. You have to maintain multiple systems, and that just drives cost up, and you're going to see that across the United States. I think, what I've explained to everybody is you have the federal EPA, then you have state. So you have,
Mhm.
your federal limits you got to meet, then the state limits. So a state you can't be more loose on your limits than what the federal sets the baseline.
Right. Right.
So a lot of states say, hey, we're going to meet the baseline federal limits. Some states choose to be a lot more restrictive, Colorado being one of those. They
Mhm.
allow you to be more restrictive but not looser.
Right.
So that's where, Colorado is taking a very aggressive approach, on that. I'm a big person in the outdoors. I love outdoor activities, and that's why we all live in Colorado. So
Mhm.
none of us are saying that we don't want to be environmentally friendly or environmental stewards, as we continue to transition. We just have to do it in a very cost-effective, smart way and do it when the time's right. I don't think
Mhm.
those three are lined up right now. I think, if we would continue to do the things we need to until technology evolves, there's a right time to transition.
Yeah.
We're just not there yet. And it is forcing us. And a lot of people, too, everybody controls the narrative of what is reality, what's truth. Renewables, what they look at is cost per megawatt hour. So, cost per megawatt hour is the term utilities use. So, they'll compare that to cost of gas. Hey, you got the fuel, so it's not, solar's cheaper. What they don't tell you is NERC, which is the North American Reliability Commission, makes you plan 3 times more for solar and almost, 3.5 times more for wind. So you have to add three of those to get one. So you're overbuilding by a factor of three to
Mhm.
allow planning reserves out. So, but if you just compare megawatt to megawatt, that's what you'll see a lot of people argue that, hey, this is a lot cheaper. But with reliability concerns and availability of renewables, you overbuild that. So now you're carrying two fleets, and your other fleet is being overbuilt by times three in a lot of
Mhm.
cases. So that is where the cost comes in.
Yeah. So you made a really good point here, and which is we all love the environment. We need clean air to breathe. I have children. I want my grandchildren and great grandchildren to have clean air one day when they're around, and maybe I'm long gone. And so, but the crux of it is that it's about getting reliable energy and having not forcing it too quickly, because I'll be honest, it feels arbitrary when we set these deadlines. So as you had mentioned, you have to have a reduction in carbon emissions, an 80% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030. Now, maybe you can expand on why is it 2030, because that's not that far away. That, to me, whenever I see even numbers like 2030, 2040, I go, okay, that's a nice round, even number. It feels arbitrary to me. We saw the same thing in California, where I think it's no gas powered cars are going to be sold starting in 2030, which I'm sure will probably get pushed back. But can you kind of kind of expand on like why it's 80% reduction by 2030? Is that arbitrary, or is that because there's some study that says it could be done efficiently by 2030?
It's very arbitrary. So
Okay.
yeah, you're spot on. And sometimes you have political leaders on both sides of the party, both sides of the
Mm,
aisle. They'll have things that they want to get done. Sometimes quickly or during their administration,
right.
and that drives some of it too. And 2030, where I'm at is every utility is not created equal. There's three types. You have investor-owned utilities, which within our state, that's the Excels and Fiescos of the world. Black Hills are investor-owned utilities. Then you have municipal utilities. That's us, and a lot of your other your bigger towns. Municipal water, municipal electric companies. Then you have co-ops, which are member-owned utilities, but it's also public power. Those are a
Hmm.
lot of your rural communities that purchase power from either companies like myself or IOUs. Well, we're all different, and you asked a good question about what we serve. So our service territory is really heavily the city of Colorado Springs. Well, we can't put solar and we can't put wind, within our footprint.
Right.
We have to build a lot of transmission, to bring that in, which also drives cost up for us. But a smart transition plan, and I like, we could definitely, I like how you went straight to the obvious of even just
Right.
picking. Where I've asked and continue to ask is you transition when you have utilized your assets and you have to bring something new on. So I
Hmm.
talked Nixon, for example. They just picked a date 2030. Nixon, really should have been 2038 to 2042. Would have been
Hmm.
we're going to have to do something anyways. So you
Right.
keep costs down for customers. If you're ever going to transition, you want to run assets till they have been fully utilized and itemized and basically been the best for your customers.
Yeah.
Then you transition. And
Right.
company would have a different transition model. Whether it's, the Comanche plants, down in Pueblo that XL has, or our plants, you look at when that end of life is, and when that happens, then they require you to transition. But
Right.
you're leaving, money on the table for like Nixon and some other plants. So that drives up your cost. It drives up
Hmm.
a lot when you just set an arbitrary date that everybody meets, instead of a
Hmm.
very smart transition plan where we as a utility commit that, hey, here's our date for transition of these assets. We commit to you to transition at that time. It's
Right.
still going to be a cost, but it's not going to be as extreme as what we're seeing.
Yeah.
We can have these conversations, at the state, and make those where you'd have many different dates of transition, not just an arbitrary by the end of 2030 or
Right.
20.
So I mean, what you're getting at is it's not one size fits all, right? Because like you said, the Nixon plant, its life probably can go till 2038, 2042. So for when we're talking about rates and things like that, if your customers were able to get the full life of that plant before they start transitioning, that's adding another 8 to 12 years, where that cost isn't being realized yet, right? So, but because you have to arbitrarily make that transition in it's 2024 in 6 years instead of 18 years, or whatever the numbers add up to. You're having to factor in those costs, sooner than later, basically, or instead of spreading it out over 18 years or 20 years, you're having to do it in the next 6 years, basically. So it's going to drive that cost up 2 or 3 times as much as it normally would.
Yes, sir. We have to maintain those for reliability up to the day they're not there. So
Right.
the analogy that I use that everybody's got cars. So
Yeah.
this no different. So just imagine you have a vehicle that you're having to maintain because you got to go to work every day. So you're
Hmm.
driving this car, you're making payments on it, and you have to have it reliable. You got to get your kids to school and get to work. And on Friday, they tell you, okay, now you got to stop driving it, and you got to buy a new car on Monday, but you
Hmm.
still haven't paid this car off yet.
Right.
But so you got all this money maintaining it all the way up to Friday. Then on Monday, you're picking up another car payment. So
Yeah.
that's really, in reality, what we're doing is we have to maintain that unit up till the day we don't. So now we've invested in it. We're still, having itemized it, still making payments, but now
Hmm.
you can't drive it no more. You can't use it for our customers, to keep rates down. And then
Right.
on Monday, you got to bring new power online. So it's the exact same type of thing that somebody would deal with in their personal life, and
Hmm.
that just isn't good financial sense. You know
Right.
that that's where it gets into where if there's a better way to do this to meet everybody's needs.
Yeah.
Whether you're wanting to have decarbonization targets and you're wanting to transition into a renewable future, that's fine. Just tell us what those are, but let us do it the most cost effective way to get there without, some hard, strict mandates that are really, there's no science behind why you pick that date.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
everybody's different.
So as we're kind of wrapping up here, just kind of, I, we, we're very solution based here, right? So we want to figure out what's the solution, what would help customers and help the Springs utilities, in the long run here. So if I'm understanding correctly, the state legislature may be making some changes, some policy changes, and saying, listen, 2030 arbitrary, let's maybe reach out to all of our providers across the state, whether that's Excel, whether that's Black Hills, that's CSU, and kind of let you guys come up with your game plan. And it's not going to be 2030. Maybe it is 2030 for some of the providers, but for you guys, realistically, it may be 2038, 2042, something like that. Some people may be behind that, and it may be 2045. But having you guys base it off of what your needs are, that would give relief to customers, that would give relief to you all. But that would have to come from the state at this point, right? Because the state is mainly the one driving this, because the state is stricter than what federal is, because they can't be looser, obviously.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So that would be the solution, basically, is maybe less arbitrary deadlines and letting you guys base it on what you actually realistically can do.
Yes, sir.
All right, sir. Just kind of last question here. And this is more of a long-term big picture, like kind of what is the future of energy here in Colorado Springs? What does that look like? Are we going to be 100% renewable 20 years from now, or is that unrealistic? Are we going to be nuclear? What's it look like in 20 years?
No, that's a good question. And the future is still being written. I think
Right.
technology is going to continue to change and evolve. But
Mhm.
for us right now, is reliability is number one for our customers.
Right.
We have to have reliability, and we have to have it the lowest cost we can. So we
Yep.
got a very diversified portfolio coming. So with Nixon coming offline, we're still putting in more gas. We're putting around 400 megawatts of gas in,
Yep.
even though we can't run it as much because of our emission targets that's been given to us. We feel that we have to have, reliability, with our military installations, our industry, our jobs, our schools. We have to have that. So we will never take reliability at risk.
Right.
But as we continue to transition, we continue to look at nuclear. So nuclear has got to be, and we've actually, our utilities policy advisory committee is looking at that now, and I look at it pretty regular. Water is going to be one of those challenges for us.
Right.
And for us being a small municipal utility, you want to be on the leading edge, not the bleeding edge. So
Mhm.
there's still technology that's being looked at and changed over time. And I think nuclear definitely is in our future for base load. But I'm
Mhm.
not 100% sure something else is going to come around at some point. I do
Right.
think that you can strides on just reactionary, type of technology, which is nuclear fusion. It
Mhm.
continues to change what it looks like, because be less use on water. And I really do think, the future is going to, it has to, with AI and the use of data centers and everything we do, computing, quantum, all these things are just pushing more and more electric load. So
Right.
if you don't have a base load solution, it's going to put us in a bad place pretty quick within our state or even within the country that we're starting to see across multiple. We've either got to get some relaxation on our current plants and use them longer till technology comes around, or we're going to probably run into some problems. I tell everybody I have concerns, across the country, with where we're going too quick. I just make sure that Colorado Springs is always going to have the lights on here. So
Right.
we're a plan in place that is going to be very robust to make sure our reliability is met. But I'm not 100% sure that, different states and other regions aren't going to see some problems after 2030.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Mr. Deal, I really appreciate it. I know you're running quite the operation, and so the fact that you were able to take some time to join us and talk about this and educate our listeners, we're very, very grateful for it. So we appreciate it, sir. If you have any new big projects upcoming that you want to talk about and let our listeners know, we're statewide, but we mostly focus on El Paso County because that's where we're based out of. So most of our listeners are from the local area here. So I know that we can learn a lot from it, and happy to talk about any new big projects coming up, sir, in the
I
near
love
future.
we try to be the most transparent, educational. I tell everybody, I don't have a filter. Usually, I would tell everybody it's on my mind,
Yeah,
So, but
that's right.
I really want our customers to be educated. I really do, and
Yeah,
so I appreciate the time this morning, and any time that I have, I would always welcome that, just because I do want educated customers, whether it gets into local and state and some of these other things that they really need to understand where we're going as a state. So I'm happy
yeah.
to appreciate the time, Jarvis.
Yeah, well, we want educated people because we don't want people opening bills up and looking at a rate increase and going, it's that Travis guy. He's doing all this. He's a greedy man, and that's why my bill's going up.
I think I'm talking about people's dartboard right now, but
yeah,
that
yeah. We always want to let people know, hey, it's a little bit more complicated. It's not a greedy Travis Deal out there just arbitrarily jacking your rates up. So again, sir, we appreciate it very much, and we hope to talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, sir.
Thank you for listening to the Engage the Rockies podcast, your go-to podcast for local and state issues concerning Colorado.